Hi, welcome. This is Sven. This guy edits, and I'm here with Eike. Do you have a title too? The other guy that
I'm like
edits?
I'm an editor. I'm like a corporate editor, documentary film editor. I think that's a fairly okay title.
Nice. And today we're going to be talking about documentary filmmaking based on a poll that we took where we asked a bunch of people what do they see as their top challenges. And Eike, you went through all the answers and you sort of created the top five concerns that they have. Is that right? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like we ran a poll on the email newsletter, and then 96 of you came back to us and told us about your concerns, about your open questions concerning documentary editing and documentary filmmaking. Then I took a look at the questions and concerns, figured out like what are the top five questions. And in today's podcast episode, we're going to talk about these questions. So you're going to learn how do you create a compelling narrative arc in documentary filmmaking? How do you organize, manage, and edit large amounts of footage? How can filmmakers balance technical elements like color grading and sound syncing without losing focus on the emotional impact of the story? How should filmmakers approach rebuilding or reshaping a documentary story during post production when the original vision doesn't or didn't work out? And how can documentary filmmakers better plan their projects in the pre production phase to avoid common editing challenges later on? Let's start with the first question. Sven, so what is your take on how do you create a compelling narrative arc in documentary filmmaking?
Okay, I mean that's obviously one of the most important parts is to when you make a documentary that you make one that people actually care about and want to watch through the end. They want to know what happens, and that's number one. The dramatic question: what happens next is really really important in scripted, in documentary, basically in anything where you're telling a story. It's important to kind of give the audience an emotional reason why they want to keep watching. They want to find something out. So if you, for example, look at a documentary like Making a Murderer, what's the dramatic question? Do you know, Eike? Have you seen the documentary?
I haven't seen the documentary, but I assume it's like what makes a murderer.
No, the dramatic question
Okay,
would
damn
be,
it.
will he make it out of jail? So
Okay.
the whole documentary is strung that he is put in jail because supposedly he killed someone that came to his property, and his whole storyline is it wasn't me. And we as the audience don't know who is in the right, and you have to wait until the very end, until the last episode to find out whether he made it out of jail or not. So that's a huge dramatic question
Yeah.
that keeps you wanting to watch every episode. And then you break it up into smaller things, like each episode on its own has twists and turns and a cliffhanger at the end. So
Yeah.
structuring your documentary in a dramatic way can really help. And you also want to consider that this dramatic question should matter to the audience. So, like crime stories usually matter because they trigger something very instinctive in us, which is survival. So whenever there's a crime, there's injustice, there's the need for us to feel, to get information, to get clarity, to find out who did it, why they did it, and that they get caught so that it doesn't happen again or it doesn't happen to you. So finding some of these primal triggers that people respond to can really help you telling interesting documentaries. So survival is one of them. Do you know what the other two are, Eike? Sorry, I'm doing like a pop test. Pop test.
I thought I'm gonna ask you the questions.
Okay.
Is survival, I guess, like, um, well, that's a really good question.
Well, they all kind of come down to survival. What do we also as a species need to survive?
Food and drinks,
Food and drinks. That's right. What do we need as well in terms of long-term survival?
shelter,
Yes, like
and
think
like emotion,
generational survival.
generational survival. Um, like we want to be safe. Like I'm right now, I'm just thinking through the Maslow's pyramid of hierarchy.
Yeah.
Maslow's pyramid of hierarchy needs like, however,
What
like
do you need to
food,
pass on your genes?
well, relationships.
Relationships, love, romance, sex. That is something that we're primarily wired to respond to. That's why men look at women. That's why women check out guys. It's because we're always checking and see, could this be the right mate for me so that I can pass on my genes and can make sure that the next generation is stronger or equal to my generation or to me. And so that has to do a lot with matching and comparing. And then there's one final other trigger. There is.
I like so we have food and drinks. So like basically we have chef's table.
Yes, to a certain degree, that is a primal trigger. Food is important. Not as strong, I would think, but it is important.
Okay.
Um, it is. It has more to do with territorial things. So defending your cave, fight or flight. If you need to run away from a dinosaur or you need to fight it to survive, these are very compelling triggers that we respond to. So if you have any kind of argument, negotiations, where a lot of things are at stake, Succession would be a show where it's about, again, it's like this legacy that this huge tycoon has built, and his offspring are trying to take over, and they're trying to gain power, and they're negotiating, they're fighting with each other. These are all themes that we're very much naturally interested in and immediately engaged in if we hit those in a story. And so these come down to something what we would call like big ideas or big themes. And then you kind of have to look for big characters that can really fulfill the premise of these ideas in the sense that they are really strong or they have a lot of growth, like they start off really weak, but they're forced to change their status in order to survive, to change, to deal with a new normal. And these are all very, very interesting, compelling, dramatic ways you can tell a documentary. Now, Eike, you're cutting a documentary right now. What is it about?
So it's about the traditional breweries in Upper Franconia in Bavaria. So it's like shedding a light on those breweries that, like, I think a lot of people are drinking beer, and
Yes.
Bavaria is like kind of the let's call it like the epicenter where a lot of things concerning beer brewing happened in the past. So when you think about beer culture, you would probably think like after like maybe instantly or like after 1 to 2 minutes about Bavaria. And there are like a few small family-run breweries that are still like brewing on a fairly small scale in Upper Franconia, and they're like holding up the tradition. So, and that is something that we want to shed a light on. It's more of a, it's really like a subculture
Yes.
that we want to elevate and that we want to shed a light on.
Great. So you're sort of celebrating the heritage and the culture of beer from one of the most where like some of the best beers being brewed, right? It's like Germany.
That's a really good pitch. Like that's a way better pitch than I just did.
So now that's kind of the world you're living in. But what are some of the like really compelling themes in there? These small breweries, what are they fighting for? They're fighting for their existence, right? Do they still have people following them passionately? Can they survive in the marketplace when you have Budweiser and all the big ones take
Yeah.
over the market? These are some kind of themes that you could potentially be looking for in a documentary like this to uncover the story and to let people experience what it's like to be a small brewery that is doing some of the best beer in the world, but yet has to go against some of the biggest companies that just try to, I don't know, flood them with money, advertising, drown them out. I don't know. Just thinking. So, do you have that kind of drama in your documentary?
Yeah, and that's specifically like the drama that I'm looking for. So each of the things that you just said, like those are actually like themes. and each of those themes is like between 2 and 7 minutes. Like it's a 2 to 7 minute beat inside of the documentary, and it was really about like the editing was really about where is the story, where is the drama, because at the start of every documentary, like you're going to interview many different people, and what you originally thought the documentary will be about might not be the thing that your documentary will be about at the end, because basically you're entering a documentary with, I would like to call it a hypothesis. So you have a hypothesis about this is going to be the story, but then you're actually going to do the research and you might figure out, well, there are actually like some really intriguing side stories, or there's just a different story that is much more intriguing than my original hypothesis. I think like one of the most important things for editing a compelling documentary is to as well being able to let go of your original hypothesis if you're like, there is a different story that is highly intriguing. So, and like I mentioned there are a couple smaller stories inside of that documentary. And one of the stories is actually one of the breweries, like one of these really small breweries, burned down last year. So they had to rebuild their entire brewery. And like the year prior to that, like in 2022, they invested like 1.1 million euros into a new brew house. That burnt down in 2023. So we're talking about this story for like, for a 2 minute segment. But it's not only like a compelling story at the end, it actually makes a point that highlights a core factor of brewing up Franconia. Because if you think about brewing, well, you have massive, like you have massive companies, AB InBev, Budweiser, like all those big players that are dominating the market. Like if something happens to them on that scale, they don't mind. Like they have that money. Like they just don't mind. But if a small brewery burns down, that brewery might go out of business.
Yep. So
And at
it's
the end
great.
of that
I
story,
mean, dramatically, that
yeah,
is really compelling stuff.
that's
With
really compelling stuff. Like you
yeah,
don't want to meditate on a thought for too long. Well, I guess that's like its own kind of genre of documentary,
yeah,
but it's not that very dramatic. So we're taking a look at this story, and then at the end it actually makes the point that a lot of the other small breweries actually helped that guy out.
yeah,
Like there was another brewery that offered this guy, hey, we're not brewing at night, you can brew your beer in our brewery, which another national company would not do, like for another national company because they are competitors.
yeah,
And this is something that you can only find in this, like in this culture, whereas like there's like this certain spirit
yeah,
amongst the brewers, because
right,
they're doing the same profession, but they're not competitors, because although like 10 kilometers down the road there might be another brewery, but those two breweries are actually not competitors, because they're just selling like in their 10-kilometer circle. That's all what they're doing. And this is one of the stories. Like there are other problems like climate change, example given, which really messes with the harvest and with the quality of the beer, because people expect that the beer every single year tastes the exact same thing. Unlike in a different unlike in a different industry like wine. Because in wine, like it's built into the product that people expect that the wine tastes different from the years. People want that. But do you want your beer like taste different than the year you had the last year? No. But the problem is you kind of have to uphold the quality, but you have problems with growing barley, you have problems with growing hops. Because of climate change, because we're getting much hotter and hotter temperatures, we will have less rain, therefore less water. So the quality will decrease, which actually then leads into a different story, which is about a hops institute. Like I'm not going to go too deep into that, but it's about a hops institute who is now trying to figure out like how can we combine different breeds of hops so that we still have great taste, but they can survive in modern day climate and in future's climate.
All right, so we established that these big ideas are important. Another thing, I want to bring two more points to this question: how do you create a compelling narrative arc in a documentary?
Yeah.
and they have to do more with the execution of these ideas. So one, for example, would be some documentaries have what we call a soundbite train, where you just have interview after interview after interview after interview, and they tend to be more information heavy and less emotionally engaging. So one way to combat that is to really look for what we call verite, even though it's kind of traditionally not the correct term, but now we understand under verite kind of this sort of in the moment scene feel. So as opposed to just having somebody, you sit them down and you ask them questions about this brewery that burned down and what they did and what they're going to do now and how they're going to fix it. You actually go out to the brewery and you take a tour with the guy, and he's going to be like, oh, look over here, this is where we used to do this in this room and it's completely in ashes now, and over here we have to rebuild this, and this is my son, by the way. He's going to take over the business. Hey, son, why don't you show him real quick how we brew something? And then the son goes and puts the hops in the thing and they start whatever doing something.
Yeah.
Watching them actually do the work as they're talking, or letting them just be in a moment, like just a natural interaction between the son and the father without asking questions, allows you to let the documentary breathe and let actual scenes happen. And that really makes for a more engaging experience for the audience when you're not just being told what the issue is, but you get to experience it. So using a lot of verite intercut with interviews is a very, very good way of creating compelling narrative. Not everybody does it. There are a lot of documentary filmmakers that just do interviews, and they still kind of figure out how to make it work because they're really relying on these big triggers, and we're really like just engaged. The other thing that I want to bring up is that you should tease a lot. So you're stating what the dramatic question is, but you're not answering it right away. You're delaying the outcome. You want the audience to just be intrigued enough to keep want to watch more, and then delay the outcome until the end, or you create another cliffhanger for the next episode. And so understanding as a storyteller, your job is to tease a lot without giving away too much at the beginning. So that's sort of my answer to that big question that we have there. Do you tease a lot in your documentary?
I would say yes. So, but I'm because like there's we are more on the exploring side of things. Like we're exploring this region, we're exploring all those different breweries. So there is not like this overarching dramatic question of like example given in the documentary you mentioned earlier on, like will he be able to get out of jail? So for us, it's really about we want to shed a light on this region, and we want to give the people a good time watching that documentary. And best case scenario, after watching the documentary, you want to drink a beer. Like that's the goal. And so the documentary is like lots and lots of mini scenes, micro problems after each other, like mini stories after each other. And in each of those mini stories, we're going through, like we're basically going through a dramatic arc, like establishing a problem, then I agitate the problem. So why is this problem actually important? Like heighten up the problem, and then to show a solution from bird's eye perspective. Okay, so example given with climate change, I had a couple of brewers talk about, okay, so this is a problem. Then, so I stated the problem, then agitate. So why is this important? Example given like the beer wine story, like that's actually a line that is in the documentary. And then teasing the solution of like, but right now there's an effort on the way to breed new hop varieties. And then that leads into more of a like solution is like there are two components to solution. The first component of solution is solution from a bird's eye perspective, And then the secondary thing is how. Like, how was it solved? And then we go into the Hobbes Institute, and he's talking about a few factual things. Example given, like they plant 100,000 plants of hops every single year. And out of 1 year, like usually they have like one or two breeds of hops. Is that correct? Like hop breeds?
Strands, I don't know.
I don't know. So like they have like one or two coming out that can actually be used for beer production.
Yeah.
And like this is the story that I'm creating. So first of all, and this is a framework that I'm using all the time when I'm telling like these mini stories, like stating the problem or the challenge, then agitating it, then teasing the solution from a bird's eye perspective, and then going into a how do we actually solve it? Because example given, if I would leave it with problem and agitation only, I think it would only work if I would tease it then and then solve it a little bit later, or otherwise I will have like a very depressing documentary
Yeah.
because it's just teasing a problem, it's just making the problem worse. Okay, so where's the solution? Like you want to know what the solution is. So it's
Yeah.
always this framework. And actually, like this is something I learned from watching the very first episode of Chef's Table. So if you haven't watched the first opening scene of Chef's Table, like go ahead, watch it. It's freely available. Like it's a scene about an earthquake in Modena in Italy, and I think it destroyed the Parmigiano factory, and like a couple thousand pieces of Parmigiano were just damaged, and the business would have gone under, would have gone down if they wouldn't have found a fix. And then they're going into the fix. So they're stating the problem, like we had this massive earthquake in Modena that had this consequence, and this is bad because of, and therefore we actually solved it with a cooking recipe. Like that's the solution. Like it's a story that brings like the main theme of the documentary, which in this case Chef's Table is about cooking. Like the solution and the theme are similar, which is again a great way to make an argument for why should you watch that documentary, because like
Yeah.
there was a problem and we solved it with cooking, which is like if all problems would be like if we would be able to solve all problems with cooking, it would be a great world. Like but it makes a cool intro into a documentary.
And no documentary is ever too small when it comes to like big ideas. So, for example, I did a documentary about ventriloquists, and the big dramatic question of one character was, will I be able to fulfill my dream and perform on a cruise ship with my little dummy? And because it stands for so much more than just that one person's dream, it stands for all of our dreams, of whatever we want to accomplish in life. We always have this aspiration, oh, I wish I was this. And you see this person really going through struggles to reach that goal or not. So you start to really connect to it, even though you might not be into dummies or ventriloquism. You might not be into beer, but if you can tie it to these universal themes, it can be really interesting. So small ideas can still be big, and if you need an example where that completely works so well, I would recommend watching the movie Bicycle Thieves from I think 1948, black and white, and it's about a person that is trying to get his bicycle back that was stolen. And it is so dramatically compelling, the film, that you're like, what? It's just a bicycle. But it is everything to that man. And you're so engaged with it. So that's very compelling. And that can be any story, it could
Yeah.
be anything.
Okay, so I think the first question we took like 20 minutes to answer it.
25.
Let's see how fast we can go with the other questions. So, yeah, second question, very technical question. How do you organize, manage, and edit large amounts of footage?
Yeah, we don't need to spend a lot of time on this. You're basically adapting a model of selecting whatever works for you. But if you're interested to really learn more about that process, I recommend checking out secreteditinghacks.com, where I show you my way of selecting and what is selecting. Selecting is what I consider the most important part of editing. It is looking at the footage, before you even start editing, before you even start thinking about editing, and you're figuring out how you feel about each moment, and you're sorting it in a way that you will remember how you emotionally responded to that material the first time you saw it. And as you're doing this, and I have like a 3-layer approach in a timeline where I move up the gold moments to the top layer. As you're sorting your material, you're starting to create a visual waveform in that particular system that I'm using. And it shows you what are the strong moments, what are the big ideas that could emerge from those strong moments. So selecting in that way is good. Selecting it into different buckets, whatever that is. It could be a bin, it could be a timeline, a reel. And these buckets would be theme-based, character-based, idea-based. And then you have the ability to really develop your story based on everything that you have, or enough that you have that you can start telling that story. So that would be my recommendation. Don't be afraid to, at the beginning, have repeated beats. So for example, you have a soundbite that works really well at the beginning of your documentary, but you also think it might actually live at the end of the documentary. Put it on both sides and decide later. Just kind of start papering the timeline with all these ideas that you have, and don't try to already scrutinize everything. You're just kind of collecting, and you're starting to build a framework, and then you start massaging later.
That's very important, and I think this is something as well that Roger said in the video. Like recently, you did a video together with Roger Nygaard on
Yes.
documentary filmmaking, documentary editing. By the way, if you haven't seen that, I would highly recommend checking that out. We'll put the link somewhere. And Roger said in that documentary that you should sort like to like. For example, given with the and that's, by the way, the book that Roger wrote about documentary filmmaking. If you don't know who Roger is, it's Roger Nygaard. He directed and edited and produced documentaries. Example given like, what was the name again?
Trekkies.
Trekkies. Thank you so much. Trekkies, which I think he sold to Paramount for $1 million.
I think it was more than $1 million, and his whole team made a profit. I forgot, it was several $1 million that they actually made profit by being in theaters and then video release.
Yeah, and this book is like 20 bucks? 25?
I don't know.
Nothing.
He is also an Emmy-nominated editor, and so he cuts for Curb Your Enthusiasm, all kinds of like fast-paced comedy shows. So he understands storytelling really, really well, and he's overall just a really good filmmaker and storyteller.
Definitely. Coming back to the point that I wanted to make, what Roger said in the video is like sort like to like, and this helped me really with the current edit that I'm doing. It's like I had like 25 different interviews from 25 different people, like 12 different breweries or so, ranging between 20 minutes and 1.5 hours for one interview. And of course, you're not going to cut all of them into the timeline. So the process was that I took each interview as like, let's call it a separate project. And I did a select for that interview, did a radio edit for that interview. A radio edit, by the way, is just an interview string out without any B-roll on top. I just kept the gold moments, and then I did that for all the breweries. And at the end, I put it all into a big timeline. It was like 2 hours 14 long. And then I sorted from that timeline all the clips into different other timelines, which were labeled by theme. So the history of beer, and then women in brewing, climate change, and so on and so forth. And simply by selecting first and then sorting into those timelines, you all of a sudden are not bombarded with 25 different interviews that you have to cut into a documentary. Instead, you have like small little timelines, and then you can cut a theme, and then you can start from there. And that's how I started. Like I started with editing the timeline, which was called History of Brewing, and then started from there. Because history is very easy to cut. Like you don't really have to worry about an emotional archaeology. So that's always a great starting point. And then I could see, oh, now from this like 3 to 4 minute edit, I can easily cut that other theme next to it. And then I was like, okay, I can cut this other theme prior to this. And then and like this, your ideas will just start. So instead of thinking about, okay, like how do I edit 25 different interviews into one documentary, think about, let's edit one interview at a time, then resort everything by theme, and then edit the documentary from there. Like
Yeah.
that definitely helps.
So
And
you're
work for a
breaking it
while.
into smaller
Yeah.
pieces. It's kind of clusters of things, and then you put all the interview portions that relate to that idea
Yeah.
cluster into one, and then you can start selecting. Okay, this guy says that. This guy basically says the same thing. I'm gonna have them complement each other, or I'm gonna pick one.
Exactly. It's kind of like the Mount Everest climbing story. Do you know that?
I think so. About the base camps.
Yeah, about the base camp. So there was basically a guy that climbed Mount Everest, and a reporter asked him, "How did you climb Mount Everest?" And he said, "I never climbed Mount Everest." And the reporter was like, "Wait, what? Like you did? Like I saw it? Like?" And then he was like, "No, what I did instead was, I saw Bootcamp 1, and then I went up to Bootcamp 1. And then I was like, the moment I was at Bootcamp 1, I saw Bootcamp 2, and then I went to Bootcamp 2, and then I saw 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then all of a sudden, I was on top of Mount Everest." So instead of thinking, oh my God, I have to climb this high mountain, which a documentary edit is, like, it's a lot of work. Like, you will spend several hundred hours for a feature-length documentary.
Yeah.
Think about, like, what are the small steps that I can take towards the goal? Because otherwise you will be super duper frustrated.
Yeah.
Right?
You can also think of it as a ladder. If the ladder has just a few steps, like or rungs, 3 of them,
Yeah.
it's very
Yeah.
hard to get to the next rung. But if you have a lot of steps
Yeah.
and rungs, it's much easier to climb up that ladder.
Yeah, definitely. And from a
Cool.
workflow perspective, I'm sorry, this takes a minute. From a workflow perspective, I'm right now working in Premiere Pro. I already hear all the people that are like, how can you work in Premiere Pro? It's okay. It's okay. It doesn't crash as often as you would think. So if
Not
you
judging.
are working in Premiere, I would highly recommend to use Premiere Productions, which is like, if you don't know what Premiere Productions is and you want to edit a documentary, look it up on YouTube. You can very easily find a project, because if you're just using Premiere will crash because it just like it's too much footage. But if you do it in Productions, it works very well. And then you create a project I created a project for every single brewery has its own project. And then I have like a master project where I do all of the re-editing. And that helps as well massively. And from a timeline perspective, and this is one last tip that I want to share, I learned this from, I think, the editor from Queen's Gambit. Like, she had a YouTube video. And she said, like, she doesn't have version timelines, but instead she has like day timelines. So at the start of each timeline, she inputs a date. Like today it would be, if I would write it, 24/10/24. So you say 2024, we are the 10th month, 10th of October, and then it's the 24th. And then every single day you tweak something, you create a new timeline for that new day. And like that, you can still like see where you were in the process like 3 months ago. Example given, if your director tells you, I like the thing that you sent me there. And then if you edit it in the same timeline and you don't have it anymore, well, yeah, that's a problem. So I would highly recommend to say like 24/10/24, whatever the date is, and then underscore, and then theme of the timeline, or master re-edit, or however you want to call it timeline. Like, these are just my 2 cents on managing, like, as well with timeline naming conventions.
And by the way, if you want to cut a scene from the Queen's Gambit, you can go on the website of the ACE, the American Cinema Editors, and I believe it's coming. If it's not already there, Netflix donated one scene from the Queen Gambits, the dailies, that you can cut, and you can cut your version of that scene.
That's a great deal.
Yeah, for free.
For free. Speaking of great deals, well, I don't have a better idea for a transition here. How can filmmakers balance technical elements like color grading and sound syncing without losing focus on the emotional impact of the story?
Yeah, I don't think I tend to hear a lot of beginning editors worry too much about color. Probably not enough about sound. You can never worry enough about sound, I think.
Yeah.
But my general advice would be don't sweat it. Try to make your cuts screenable because you're going to get less notes from the director or the audience. What does it mean, screenable? It has to play as if it's the real thing. So fix any audio problems that you have, like audio pops it's a huge detractor, and it's a clear sign of a beginning editor that they don't even know what an audio pop is, but you hear it. You can hear what it is basically you cut an interview, you cut maybe a next audio clip next to it, and because the way that you made the cut, you're cutting off a waveform in the middle of a spike that will create a pop. And so you either have to find like directly where the waveform goes to zero, or even better is you just do a 2-frame audio dissolve, and that will smooth out any pops.
Yeah.
But I'm always, when I'm like working with other editors, junior editors, and I'm asking them to cut a scene for me or whatever, and I hear audio pops, I'm like, okay, so I have to give you the lecture about audio pops again. And they're, oh, I've
Yeah.
never heard about this. And let me tell you, it's a big deal because the audience will be thrown out of the story. Like any problem with audio, they're like, I can't hear what they're saying. It's too low, or this is hurting my eyes because my ears because it's too loud. It's distorted. The background noise is too much. All these things get us very very frustrated, and an audience that's frustrated tunes out, is not engaged, and clicks away. So that's very, very important. Color, yes, it is important to a certain degree. I've had a situation where a director just could not get comfortable with the scenes that I showed him. And then I just started color correcting, made everything darker and moodier. And then he was like, oh, now I get it. Like now I'm feeling the film. And so make it screenable, but don't sweat it. Like don't think like you need to be an expert in color or sound. It's just if it looks good, it's good. If it sounds good, it's good.
Yeah. It's as well very dependent on on the agreement that you made with the director. Because example given, like with the beer film, the director and like Greg, the director and me, like Greg was fine. Like Greg told me, you can show me really rough radio edits, and I will know that those are really rough radio edits. So I'm not gonna give you a note on like every single little thing, but this is a communication thing, and you have to communicate that well with your director. If you're working for the first time with a director, overextend yourself a little bit when you want to show them when you want to show them something for the first time. But example given right now, like I'm rendering, like I'm working with proxies, I'm rendering out the proxies, and he's fine with seeing the proxy version.
What's
But
a
that
proxy?
being, a proxy is basically like a compressed video file. So, and that is one of the other reasons why my Premiere doesn't crash. So
So
example given
lower
when,
lower resolution means that
yeah,
it's the image is not as clear and focused. It's a little fuzzier,
yeah,
maybe.
a bit washed out, a bit more gray, not
Yeah.
graded, not great. Um, and by having like by creating a proxy, so example given, like you have your original audio, like you have your original video clip, and then you have your proxy. And the original video clip is, let's say, 10 gigabytes big. The proxy might be 1 to 2 gigs big, which makes it much easier to edit. Like the editing software can handle it much better. So example given, when you're editing a documentary that has like 2 to 5 terabytes of footage, you don't want to smack 2 to 5 terabytes of footage into Premiere. It will just crash. Instead, create proxies first, because then you like decrease the amount of work that Premiere has to do, or your editing software of choice. Then example given, like if you have like the option of something like Premiere Productions, I would go with that as well, because that like minimizes the workload per project as well again. Yeah. And bringing it back to the original point, like it's a case of communication. Like if you haven't communicated anything with the director, I would show them what you said, something that is screenable. But if you have communicated with the director, you are super happy with seeing rough radio edits, then he's super happy to see rough radio edits. And then if the director like later on says, well, could you polish it a little bit more for me? Like, could you color correct it a little bit? Then you're like, yeah, sure. No problem. No problem whatsoever. So it's a communication thing.
Excellent. Well, shall we move on to the next thing?
Yeah, question number 4. How should filmmakers approach rebuilding or reshaping a documentary story during post-production when the original vision doesn't work out?
Yeah, I mean, that happens all the time. There's not a documentary that is working the way it was originally planned. The rewrite happens in the editing. And so you have to be open to it. You have to think out of the box. You have to use techniques like Frankenbiting, which means you're putting sound like sentences together or words forming a new sentence, to have characters say things that they maybe didn't say, to explain things or to make it more concise, to make them say what they really think, because sometimes they won't say what they really think, and that has to do a little bit with ethics in terms of like how much can you sort of lean into that. That's a whole different question. But ultimately, your goal is to entertain the audience, to engage them, to connect with the material, to learn, to change, whatever that means in terms of just being inspired by this. So yeah, I would strongly suggest that you start getting really, really comfortable with thinking out of the box. A lot of scripted editors, specifically in like scripted television, are very used to just cutting the script. And maybe they are tweaking it a little bit by taking out some lines and maybe moving small things around. But a documentary editor and also a reality show editor, they're just so comfortable in looking at the big picture and moving things around and moving scenes in completely different places or using shots from other scenes to make another scene work. That is a skill that is very, very desirable in the documentary world and then the reality show world, and that is something that you should be really, really open to. There's a theory that I coined, the editing block theory, and we can leave a link to like a free webinar where I just talk about how you can really completely get off the script or the plan and really find the truth or the real story in the footage. Like the footage will tell the story itself. You just need to see it. So as an editor, I don't see my role so much as making the story happen. It's more like shaping the story that's already there and bringing out the best potential of it. So that's kind of a very vague approach to this answer. Do you have something more specific? How you could rebuild or reshape a documentary when it's not working?
Yeah, I think the first and most important thing is to stay open to the idea of reshaping it. Because if you're not open to that idea, your documentary will, well, let's say, might fall flat.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not using techniques like Frankenbiting. And Frankenbiting could be like, there is one audio clip from minute 1, there is one audio clip from minute 5, and you just cut them together. You talked about ethics. The solution that I found for myself, and this probably doesn't work for everyone, but the solution I found for myself is I'm always asking myself, it's very much context based. So I'm always asking myself, would that person say something along those lines in the context I'm cutting them in? And if the answer to that is yes, then I'm going to cut it in. But I might tell the director, hey, this is a heavy Frankenbite, and I want you to take a look at this as well, because this might lead to problems.
Yeah.
So like this is not this was not a Frankenbite issue, but we had a story when we were talking about the Reinheitsgebot, which is the German purity law. And the German beer purity law basically means you can only use 4 ingredients in the beer brewing process, which is hops, barley, malt, and yeast. And there was one brewer teacher, or like one brewing professor at the University Weinstefan in Munich, that helped breweries that had an infection in their cellar and that couldn't sell their beer, they helped them fixing that problem, which is on the one hand good, but on the other hand, it wasn't according to the purity law. And the purity law in Germany is a real thing. People are emotional about it. At the moment, like, and this wouldn't have come out if he wouldn't have had a fight. Like, this is allegedly, by the way. I should say that. Like, this happened, but the following part is allegedly. He got into a fight with his assistant, and his assistant published the names of the breweries that he helped, and those breweries had to shut down because people figured out about that. And allegedly, the teacher committed suicide. The problem with that story is, like, first of all, this is like on a surface level, this is a super compelling story. It's very interesting. It's very dramatic. But then I did a little bit of research, and I couldn't back the story up. I couldn't find enough evidence. And that was something that I told the director, like, hey, this is like a very interesting story, but I cannot find any evidence that this like really happened, especially with the suicide. I figured out that this case happened to the degree of that he helped breweries and that they didn't do it according to the purity law, and that there was and he went to court for that, if I remember correctly. But all of the other parts, I couldn't back it up. And then I was like, I would rather not cut that into the documentary than cutting it in and then getting a backlash because people are like, this is not true.
Yeah.
So when you're doing documentary, you have to, like, to a certain degree, you have to be a researcher, and you have to find evidence to back stories up. Like, not everything, right? If people express their opinions, you don't have to back that up, but everybody knows it's an opinion. But if there is a story that is being told, you should always check out, like, is this story true or not? Because otherwise you will have massive, massive problems. Especially, like, example given, let's say your documentary, out of that very reason, goes viral because of that specific story. And then later down the line, people figure out that story was actually not quite accurate. You have a massive problem because your documentary went viral, and now the problem with the documentary will go viral as well. And that will harm your reputation as a documentarian.
Yeah. And certainly a conversation you have with your director, let's say you're the editor of a documentary, where you point this out. And then you kind of decide together what to do about it. I mean, there's also, I don't know, this is very appropriate to your documentary. There's the beer test. I don't know if you heard about this. But Dr. Karen Perlman says when it comes to documentary and how she shapes interviews, she does the beer test. Would that person still have a beer with me after the fact when they see it? And that's one way to do it. That doesn't work all the time. I was cutting on a documentary about the alt-right movement, so that person would have never had a beer with me after the way that I cut the documentary. But it's one measure you could apply.
Yeah, and with documentary, like, you're going into very philosophical questions very, very quickly, because then again you must enter the question, and we're not going to do that in this podcast because it just, like, it would burst. Like, what is truth?
Yes, what is truth?
Is there such thing as an objective truth? Well, certain things can be objectively true, but then again there's this tiny little thing called subjective truth.
Yes.
Which is a whole different thing.
Yeah, I'm making a video right now with Dr. Karen Perlman about that topic, documentary versus reality shows, and we're talking about ethics, and we're talking about what is truth in that. So it's coming soon.
That's a very interesting topic. I'm very much looking forward to seeing that video.
Very cool. So we have one more question left, right?
Yeah. That being said, one more question left. Question number 5. How can documentary filmmakers better plan their projects in the pre-production phase to avoid common editing challenges later on?
First of all, it'd be good for the editor and director to have a conversation And the earlier you have that, the better. So if they're still in shooting and production mode, if this is the first time you're working with a director, it's good to get on the same page. If it's a new director, it's good to have that conversation to talk about stuff like coverage, the importance of coverage and B-roll and inserts, these kind of things that you might not think about when you're shooting your first documentary. You're just getting the interview and then you feel like you're done. But to be able to cut that interview, you need something to cut to. So grabbing extra shots of them from behind, from the person doing the interview, maybe their hands of the interviewee, all kinds of things that you could cut to potentially so you can break it up. Also, talking about when you're there anyway, let's grab B-roll anyway. As you're going and walking into the house, why not already have the camera rolling? Shake hands, talk about it as you're walking through the space. Hey, what's this? What are you doing over here? So how does this work? Can you show me? These kind of things, if you're covering them and you're aware of it as a cameraman or as a director, that this is the gold that really will make your documentary come alive, you're in a much better position. And then as you're doing your first or second shoot and the editor's already there to do the selects, have another conversation. It's like, okay, this worked really, really well. But maybe we can focus on this as well, or get this the next time as well, so that any problems, whether they're technically or creatively, you can already fix them or change them with your next shoot. And then also, as you start cutting the documentary and you're kind of telling the story, you're starting to realize, oh, this story really wants to be about this and we don't have enough about this. You are having another interview, a follow-up interview, a final interview with your main characters. Give the director suggestions of what kind of questions to ask, what kind of things to shoot in terms of verite. What should they still show us? What should we still experience? You can plan certain activations, so certain scenes that you cover just to kind of demonstrate certain concepts. So, for example, let's say you have this beer brewery that burned down. Is there still anything left ruin-wise, or is it like completely rebuilt by the time you started shooting?
Honestly, I don't know, because I've never been on set.
Okay.
But
Do you have any footage of ruins?
We want to get like local news footage because we know that there is local news footage. But
Yeah.
the problem with that is the news station is, well, they're willing to give it to us. They're just demanding a little bit of money. So actually there is like one guy from the team who is basically trying to reach out to every person in that city, because we know that the news station that used the footage purchased the rights from locals.
Okay.
And we're like, well, the news station wants X, and that's probably 10 times more than the local that shot the footage. The local that shot the footage might be even like, well, you can have it. Like you're making a documentary about this. Sure, you can have it. So we're right now actively researching for that footage, because right now, like, there is not, I just have photos, which will work very, very well. Actually, photos, like, get a lot of photos as well. Like, don't only think in, okay, like, I gotta shoot video. Like, think in photos, because photos are so versatile. Photos are more versatile than video clips.
Yeah.
Because
And if you do have photos and you're still shooting the person for the interview, then have an extra scene with that person going through the photos. Like maybe he's opening up the box where all the photos are, and he's like, oh, this is where, see how this room is completely destroyed, and this was the machine that we use. And then suddenly you have verite. It's not just an interview. You have a moment. They start crying in that moment because they're remembering how hard the times were. And now you have like something really compelling.
yeah, if you're able to get real emotions on camera, like, this is the gold moment for documentaries. If you're thinking like gold moments about feature films, like example given Marvel blockbuster, you're thinking of these massive crowd scenes with great looking CGI and like massive sets, cool fight scene. In a documentary, the gold moment is the emotion. If you get that on camera, you're good. Is there anything else that you would like to add? Otherwise, we can wrap up this interview, this podcast episode.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of there. As you're having these discussions with your director, also talk about these themes and these dramatic questions, and sort of start having them think about it that way as well. Just having the discussion about like how do we tell stories with a director
Yeah.
might really just sync you up, get you on the same page about how we're going to tackle this documentary, how we're going to make sure this is going to be
Yeah.
engaging. To end this session, I just want to point out, if you're seeing this before November 21st, you should go to editrave.com. That's an online editing summit where you can, for example, meet Roger Nygaard. We're going to have one session with him where he talks about documentary filmmaking. He's going to give away his book, so you can get your free copy if you're lucky. And also, we're going to talk about a coaching program where he takes a small group of editors or documentary filmmakers, and he's going to coach them for several months, 3-4 months, on their documentary project or on a sample project that we're going to provide. So go to editrave.com, check that out. We have a bunch of editors, Emmy Award winning, ACE members, talking about all kinds of aspects, different genres, scripted editing, feature films, television, AI editing, and documentary editing. And with that, Eike, thanks so much. I always love these conversations about specific topics, and we hopefully let us know in the comment section if there is one, whether you're interested to tackle another topic where we find the top 5 pain points and discuss them.
And as always, happy editing and cheers.
Happy editing. Cheers.